Ottawa wakes up under quiet skies. The Senators drop a tight one in overtime out west. And a war overseas is starting to show up in something very local: the price at the pump. Later in the brief, we'll come back to what Canada is and isn't saying about the Iran strikes and what could change next. In Ottawa today, mainly cloudy, with a high near 6 degrees Celsius and a low around -5. And a quick local wallet check before you head out. Analysts who track fuel prices say Ottawa gas could rise roughly 6 to 9 cents per liter over the next couple of days, tied to market jitters from the Middle East conflict and concerns about shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. You may see the jump show up unevenly, station to station. Now to the Senators. Ottawa lost 5-4 in overtime to Edmonton after leading by 2 through 40 minutes. The game flipped late, and it ended with an Oilers power play moment in overtime, a slapshot winner with Brady Tkachuk in the box. For Ottawa, Drake Batherson scored twice for the second straight game. Tim Stützle had 2 assists, extending his point streak to 10 games, despite dealing with an illness since the Olympics. Ottawa's still in the wild card push, and the bigger question now is whether they can turn strong stretches into full results against teams that can swing a game quickly. Turning now to the bigger national picture with a very Ottawa-specific angle. The Ottawa Carleton District School Board says it's projecting an $11.5 million operating deficit this school year. The board says it passed a balanced budget last June, but after the school year started, it was required to reassess, and expenses came in much higher than expected. The big underestimates it's pointing to include about $2 million for occasional teachers, about $4.7 million for educational assistants, and about $9 million for maintenance. Enrollment shifts also matter here. The board expects a decline in elementary enrollment to reduce provincial grant revenue by about $5.6 million, even as secondary enrollment rose unexpectedly and added roughly $1 million. Total enrollment is about 75,400 students, around 500 fewer than 2 years ago. Here's the key point. Even when revenues tick up, the board says cost pressures are outpacing them, and the province has already appointed a supervisor, citing mismanagement. What happens next will likely be less about one cut and more about what spending controls and oversight look like over the next budget cycle. Now to the primary thread today: Canada's posture as the US and Israel intensify strikes on Iran, and Iran retaliates across the region. Multiple reports say Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed in the US-Israeli strikes. Iran has responded with missiles and drones aimed at Israel and US assets in the region, and casualty figures are being reported by different sources, with Iranian state media citing more than 200 dead in Iran. Independent verification is difficult in fast-moving conflicts like this. And communications disruptions inside Iran are being reported. Canada's government response has been carefully worded, but it's also drawn attention. Prime Minister Mark Carney has said Canada supports the U.S. objective of preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, while also saying Canada didn't take part militarily and had no advance notification of the strikes. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand has urged a diplomatic solution and has declined to say whether Canada views the strikes as a violation of international law. The risk here is twofold. First, escalation. Analysts quoted in coverage warn Iran may try to raise the cost for the U.S. and Israel by widening the conflict, drawing in other states, stressing air defenses, and raising the chance of miscalculation. Second, spillover, including here at home. Canada's police chiefs say there's no specific or imminent threat to Canada tied to the conflict, but they're warning that geopolitics can inspire hate-motivated acts or extremist responses. Ottawa listeners should hear that as a general alertness message, not a signal of a particular threat. Mid-episode note to connect the dots. This is also why you're hearing more about gasoline prices today. Even without physical disruption to Canadian supply, global oil pricing reacts quickly when the Strait of Hormuz feels less secure. And there's also a human-scale piece playing out in Canada. Iranian Canadians have held large rallies with sharply different emotions, some celebrating the strikes as a possible opening for regime change, others focused on fears for civilians and the need for change to come from inside Iran. In Ontario, police estimated tens of thousands at a rally in Richmond Hill, with no reported incidents, but major traffic impacts. So what happens next? What's the plausible near-term path? Watch 3 things. 1. whether strikes and retaliation expand beyond current targets, especially involving Gulf states or major shipping lanes. 2. What Canada does on consular support and travel advisories. Global Affairs has already warned Canadians to avoid much of the region, and flight disruptions have been reported on some routes. And 3. Whether Ottawa clarifies what support means in practice, because that wording matters domestically and it matters with allies. Before we close, 2 quick signals elsewhere. Stats Canada says foreign direct investment into Canada was $96.8 billion last year, the highest since 2007, with a big share coming from the U.S., and a lot of it tied to mergers and acquisitions. Economists are cautioning that the headline number doesn't tell you whether investment is building new capacity or simply changing ownership. So the sector breakdown is what to watch. And in baseball, a U.S. team gearing up for the World Baseball Classic routed the San Francisco Giants 15-1 in an exhibition with 19 hits. It doesn't predict the tournament, but it does underline depth, both in bats and on the mound, as the U.S. tries for its first WBC title since 2017. Final piece to watch today. In Ottawa, keep an eye on pump prices over the next 48 hours, and at the same time, watch for any clearer timeline from the school board and its provincial supervisor on how this year's deficit gets contained. That's your Daily News Bite for Wednesday, March 4th, 2026.